Episode 2 of The Bad Batch presents us with something we've only really seen once before in Star Wars. What would happen if a clone trooper straight up left the Republic, left his clone brothers behind, and began a new life for himself far away from any conflict or war? I am, of course, talking about Cut Lawquane, this dude here, who we first saw in Season 2 of The Clone Wars in the episode titled The Deserter. Cut is the deserter. He ran away. One of those throwaway characters. Filoni was like, oh yeah, remember that dude? No? Well, we're bringing him back. Nowadays, anytime the clones are mentioned, we can't help but think of that one crucial day in the Star Wars timeline that changed everything. Execute Order 66 Day. Forget May the 4th, mate. Let's get Order 66 Day. Let's remember that. The day all clones turned on their Jedi generals, and the day of the Purge, and the day the Republic fell to give rise to the Empire. Every single clone trooper is now a member of the Galactic Empire and is to obey the orders of the evil Emperor, except for a special select few. Cut Lawquane here is one of them, along with Captain Rex, the Bad Batch, and maybe a few others. But each of these clones have a specific reason for not following Order 66, except for Cut. So what happens to a deserter who perhaps has never even heard the Order? Well, there's a few theories out there for why and how Cut did or didn't experience Order 66, and some of these I mentioned in my last video with references and details in episode 2 of The Bad Batch. But today I'm going to break down each different theory and figure out what happened to Cut during Order 66. Did he just acting weird for a couple days? Did he drive his wife insane? Did he suddenly have Jedi killing urges? Let's see, did he draw himself a picture of a Jedi and try stabbing it? Hey everyone, it's Andrew. So what I find interesting is the inhibitor chips were only indirectly mentioned in Attack of the Clones. The Kaminoans create the clones, but obviously the Sith and Darth Tyrannus were behind their creation. But it wasn't until Season 6 of the Clone Wars that we got some real information and details on why the clones turned as they did with the issuing of Order 66. In the episode called Conspiracy, Clone Trooper Tup's chip malfunctioned and activated prematurely, awakening his desire to kill Jedi. And I think it's pretty crazy this was the first real mention of the actual inhibitor chips. I mean, following Revenge of the Sith, we always knew it was something to do with the clones' programming and the way in which they were created that caused them to kill the Jedi, but the chips give them an actual tactile reason for their Jedi killing behavior. Alright, so the first theory is all about actually hearing the Order. When Palpatine spoke the words execute Order 66, all clones across the galaxy received the message in their armor's comms, or perhaps elsewhere. Perhaps, the Venator had speakers and, sent the message to everyone. Everyone heard it on board. And the theory goes that you need to hear the actual words execute Order 66 for the inhibitor chip to work. This is why in the first episode of The Bad Batch, Crosshair only started attacking Caleb after he heard Tech repeat the words execute Order 66, and why Cut never responded to Order 66, because he never actually heard the words himself. In this scene here, the Bad Batch and Omega only refer to the Order and the inhibitor chip. They never actually say the words execute Order 66. And perhaps when Rex passed through here the day before, he was also careful to not actually say the words. So is that really all it takes? Do clones need to actually hear the words for it to work? Well, I mean, what about all the clones that were off duty at the time? What about clones who were sleeping? Clones whose armor had been damaged in battle and their comms were no longer working. Surely Cut here wasn't the only one to not hear the Order. But as far as we know, all other clones followed the Order. For the Bad Batch, it's a little different because they're, genetically different to clones. The inhibitor chips are ineffective. They're kind of like mutants, except for Crosshair. Crosshair, his chip was a bit stronger. Echo as well, he used to be a regular clone and he's now a cyborg who's, been through a lot of physical modifications. So his chip was likely damaged or destroyed by the CIS. Rex's chip was removed by Ahsoka at the end of Season 7 of the Clone Wars. Before that, he was just like any other clone. So Cut still would likely have the chip in his brain, but was it so simple that he just didn't hear the Order? I don't think this means that his chip didn't trigger. There were likely loads of clones throughout the galaxy who didn't actually hear Palpatine speak the words execute Order 66. So I don't think this is how the chip worked. Which brings me to the next theory. To me, Order 66 feels more like a signal that flicks a switch in the clone's brains, meaning Cut would have indeed been triggered by the Order 66 message, although for him it would have likely had no effect, because he'd already defied his growth conditioning and genetic programming to defect from the clone army. Cut is such a specific case. So few other clones have done what he's done and broken away from the clone army. But that said, did the chip just not have an effect because he simply had no Jedi to kill? Cut has completely moved on from his days in the Republic. He's not surrounded by it. It's not what's on his mind. Therefore, even though he's programmed with the inhibitor chip, it's likely it simply did nothing because it's no longer his life. It's no longer what he surrounds himself with, and he's no longer part of any regimented army. So that's that theory. Chip worked, but Cut has nothing to do with it anymore. Alright, so next up is the theory that Cut was simply out of range and therefore his inhibitor chip was never activated. Cut is in the Outer Rim, after all, and was mostly untouched for most of the Clone Wars. However, I just learned that Cut was actually in Revenge of the Sith. I didn't know this. It's this planet here where Stas Ali is killed on the speeder bikes. You remember that? So there goes that theory. These clones received the order loud and clear. I want more of these random Jedi deaths in Revenge of the Sith. There are a bunch more brutal depictions that never made the final cut of the film. The one where the Jedi gets annihilated by the turret. Alright, so Cut isn't out of range, but the next theory is that Cut's chip worked. He did receive Order 66, albeit unknowingly, but again, simply had no Jedi to kill and no one to follow in the newly formed Galactic Empire. He'd completely broken away from all military life, and so when his inhibitor chip registered Order 66, he started acting weird for a few days. Sue, his wife Sue, is like, "Yo man, what's up? You're acting a little strange, you're acting funny, what's going on?" And that was about it. It's likely the effects of Order 66 wore off after a few days, as was the case with other clones, or so I've heard. They no longer had their Jedi killing urges, and were eventually phased out for conscripts, which we saw a little precursor for in the first episode of The Bad Batch when Tarkin spoke with the Kaminoans. Although clones are much more well-trained and effective than conscripts, argue the Kaminoans, they're also much more expensive, rebutted by Tarkin. Now, another theory is that Cut's chip in some way was damaged and therefore he never received the order. He was, of course, originally involved in the Clone Wars, and what drove him to his life of solitude away from all of the war and clone armies was the fact that he saw so many of his clone brothers killed in action and injured. Sometime after the first Battle of Geonosis, Cut's ship was shot down, an accident which killed lots of his clones, his fellow clone soldiers, and this was a real realization moment for Cut. He was also injured in the crash, and perhaps during this time, during this crash, during this event, his chip was somehow damaged or destroyed. Therefore, he never received the order, never had the urge to kill Jedi. But Cut is such a unique case, and a bit of an anomaly when it comes to clone troopers. I'm not sure we'll ever get an official explanation for why his chip never activated, but I'm really hoping he makes more of an appearance in The Bad Batch down the track, and we get more explanations for everything that happens following Order 66. For one of the most crucial periods in the Star Wars timeline, with so much media already out there about this time period, it still feels like there are so many gaps and plot holes to fill. And I'd love to learn more about Cut's backstory, his life before and after the Clone Wars, and get an official canon explanation for what happened here. Why didn't he act on Order 66? What do you guys think? Which theory do you believe to be true regarding Cut's inhibitor chip? Do you think he got the order? Do you think he missed it? Do you think it just doesn't affect him? Or do you have your own theory? Let me know in the comments. And for more on the latest on The Bad Batch, you can watch one of these videos here. Lots of details and Easter eggs in this show. It's full of them. And I'm sure I'll be covering more Bad Batch as the show continues to release, so stick around for that. And also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and join my Discord for lots more Star Wars gaming, Star Wars news, updates, memes, and everything else. And thanks for watching this. My name's Andrew. I'll catch you soon.
Stay bombastic.